Thank you guys all for coming out to the Bankless Summit. Bankless Summit was a brainchild I had with just the Bankless team after who goes on the conference circuit? Who's a conference circuiter? Who goes to all the side events with the panels? Who is frustrated about how little you learn about the side event and panel format? I don't learn too much. And so the idea behind Bankless Summit was to be a reaction to that. We have some amazing brains in Ethereum. We have some amazing brains who have really big ideas, and the panel format just is not conducive to that whatsoever. So this is meant to be something a little bit more like TED Talks for Ethereum, charging the speakers who have graciously given their time, blood, sweat, tears to produce their talks to make their most interesting talk possible about the thing that they are the most passionate about, because that is what is good content. And so that is what you're going to hear from today. We've got a lineup, really crazy lineup, 10, 11 panels, a debate at the end. There'll be drinks at the very end. Drinks will be flowing on the debate, at the debate. And then a break for lunch in the middle as well. And so that's what we got in store for you guys. I think it's pretty cool. I know it's been a very long week, so very happy to have you guys all here. The point here is for you to be able to just relax and listen all day. It shouldn't be too hard. All these speakers are doing all the work. So just a big shout out to all the speakers who signed up for this. It's not usually what speakers sign up for when they come to a conference, but the fact that they decided to put a bunch of work together to make a talk happen, I feel very grateful for. So to kick it all off, I want to bring up our first speaker, possibly the most bullish person on ETH in existence. You guys probably all know him. His name's Anthony Sassano. Everyone give him a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. So today, I want to take you all on a journey through the infinite garden that is Ethereum. We'll start at the beginning, we'll make our way to the present, and we'll look a little bit forward into the future. So in the beginning, there was Ethereum, right? We planted the seeds in our infinite garden, we fertilized the soil, we did some work to get it all going, and it was a humble beginning. Vitalik published his white paper for Ethereum in late 2013 to little fanfare. The crypto ecosystem was quite small. Not many people knew about it. I heard about it back then, but I didn't really pay much attention to it, to my detriment, of course. And then the Ethereum ICO was held in mid-2014, raised $18 million worth of BTC, and building of Ethereum began in earnest for the next year. And as you can see on the right-hand side, this is one of the reasons Vitalik kind of gave for wanting to build in the decentralized ecosystem. His Warlock in World of Warcraft got nerfed. He was really upset about this, but he's since said that wasn't the real reason, but that's my headcanon. So Ethereum launches in 2015 out of an apartment in Berlin. As you can see on the image on the right-hand side, that was basically the apartment. I went there recently, actually, when I was in Berlin, stood outside. It was just amazing being there and just knowing that that's where Ethereum was launched from. And it was a humble launch, but still a big launch. Thousands of participants from around the world began mining on Ethereum because obviously at the time Ethereum was proof of work. And the world computer, which was our original narrative for what Ethereum is, was now alive. And I actually think we should go back to calling Ethereum the world computer. It may not be a powerful computer, but it is a world computer nonetheless. So then Homestead, the first Ethereum network upgrade or hard fork, went live. It was the earliest implementation of what we now know as Ethereum Improvement Proposals or EIPs. This is the main way changes make their way into the network. And it also added the Mist wallet, which has since been deprecated a long time ago. But this was really the first time you could deploy contracts in a relatively easy way to Ethereum and have an all-in-one wallet available to you. And then, of course, the DAO was the first big, I guess, part of attention that Ethereum got. And if you want a TLDR of the DAO, that's the image on the screen is the TLDR. Everyone's money just went away for a temporary period of time. So the whole idea around the DAO was to have this on-chain venture capital fund governed by token holders, essentially investing in projects within the Ethereum ecosystem. And it was by far the most exciting thing happening on Ethereum at the time, and it attracted about $150 million worth of ETH in a relatively short period of time. But then the worst possible thing happened. The DAO contracts were hacked and drained for about 33% of the invested ETH. And we started asking this question back then. Is code law? Should we allow this hack to continue to basically be part of the Ethereum network? Should we just like write off our losses and continue on? And of course, we kept repeating this. You know, code is law, code is law, code is law, code is law. And we kind of lost meaning of what code is law actually is. And we ended up like this. Just very, very confused. And we started just memeing that it was coleslaw. Like we had no idea what was going on, right? But of course, code is not law. We split the network in two, Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, because as a community back then, we decided that we would reverse the hack with something called an irregular state transition, which didn't roll back the chain technically, but did return the funds to their rightful owners and basically made the hackers' ETH worthless. But of course, because Ethereum Classic was spawned out of this, the hacker still had access to Ethereum Classic, so they still made money in the end, which wasn't great, obviously. And then this whole kind of debate around what is the real Ethereum really happened. And why I think this is really important is because it really showed the world that social consensus rules everything. Yes, the ledger is immutable. Yes, we try to make it as immutable as possible. Yes, we try to make sure that we never have to invoke social consensus because it is messy. As you see, like even back then, we had a split in the network, but it is critically important to understand that that is how these networks are governed. Code is not law. It is not immutable. Humans are the ultimate law here, and we decide what is the real Ethereum. And that's why Ethereum Classic, even though it is technically the quote-unquote original Ethereum, it is not the one we consider to be Ethereum today. And then another bad thing happened in late 2016, something called the Shanghai DOS attacks. Now, it was called Shanghai because I believe a lot of core developers were in Shanghai at the time for DevCon, I believe, back then. I didn't get into Ethereum until 2017, so this history is a bit fuzzy to me. But really, it was the first real test of Ethereum's stability and resilience as a network. Essentially, what happened was there was bugs that were being exploited in both the Geth and Parity clients at the time, and it was like a cat and mouse game. And it really was the core developers, like this image on the right, that's what they were doing. They were just like running around trying to blow out a fire that kept coming back. This went on for about a month, and then eventually there was a hard fork to fix this. But why this was critically important was because it showed the value of client diversity. There were two clients where if there was a bug in Geth, Parity would kick in and keep the network alive, and vice versa. So essentially, the network did not go down. There was a degraded experience. Blocks took longer to mine, but the network did not go offline. And this informs a lot of decisions we make today about client diversity, which I'll go into a little bit later. And also, we learned that permissionless networks, we learned this from the DAO, but also from this, they're extremely adversarial. You are literally allowing anyone to do whatever they want on the network, as long as it is in the confines of how the network is coded and developed here. And then, of course, we had the great ICO mania of 2017/2018. This was a absolutely crazy period in Ethereum's history, I believe. This is the first time that Ethereum got outside of crypto attention, mainstream attention. The DAO got a little bit, but nothing like this. As we all know, tens of billions of dollars were raised as part of the great ICO mania, and a lot of it was wasted, unfortunately. There were no, from memory, like DAO-like hacks that happened, but the thing is that there were so many scams that it just took so much money out of the ecosystem. But it wasn't all sad and wasn't all bad. But even though we raised billions of dollars, that had to come from somewhere, right? So people had to buy ETH to put money into these ICOs. So that resulted in ETH greatly increasing in value from $10 to $1,420, which is just a crazy amount. Like in a single year, it went absolutely nuts. People were talking about the flippening because it was approaching BTC's market cap, which was a big deal at the time. But the thing is that we also needed to realize that a lot of these things were unsustainable, and we realized that the hard way in 2018, but before that, we had this Christmas with crypto kitties. I thought I'd mention this before I go into the 2018 bear market, but this was another big thing that happened that is kind of lost to time at this point, but in December of 2017, this was the first time NFTs really came to the forefront. There were other NFTs at the time, like CryptoPunks and stuff like that, but they were very small, very insider. This is when people really started talking about NFTs, but it also resulted in very high fees on the Ethereum L1, and this is where the scalability discussions started in earnest. But of course, After that, we had the crypto winter, probably the worst crypto winter that we'd had in crypto at the time. We were all like this on the right-hand side. We were trying to mask the fact that we were losing lots of money by holding ETH down because it went down 94%, right? And as you can see, like the drunken stupor of the ICO mania turned into the world's worst hangover, and we all kept building. But we did keep building, right? People kept saying it's so over, but it wasn't, right? We kept building, and of course, a lot of things were spawned out of that. The first iterations of DeFi were spawned during that time period. We had Maker go live, technically end of 2017, kept growing from there. We had Uniswap and Aave go live, and really showed the power of a decentralized financial ecosystem running on permissionless rails. And also, proof of stake finally came into view. We had been discussing this since the beginning of Ethereum, but the thing is that we didn't really know how to get there. But in 2018, 2019, 2020, we started formulating a plan around this, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And also, importance was placed on ETH as an asset because we were all sad that ETH was going down so rapidly, and we started wondering what makes ETH valuable. Like, is it a money like BTC? Is it a store of value? Is it just gas for the programmable network that is Ethereum? And then, of course, rollups also became the main focus. Even back then, we were talking about scalability, as I said, with CryptoKitties. But even before then, there was talks of like state channels, which is something that came from Bitcoin because they had the Lightning Network, and then Plasma, which is now lost to history. But now rollups, as we all know, are the way to scale Ethereum. And ETH's monetary policy also came into view at the time because, as I said, we were trying to define what ETH actually is, how it should be valued. And this graphic on the right-hand side was something that Eric Connor and I put together when we founded ETHub, basically showing Ethereum's monetary policy and issuance policy. And the community came to the consensus that Ethereum's monetary policy should not be like total capped like Bitcoin is. It should be it should be thought about in a better way, and put more emphasis on the fact that we need to do something called minimum viable issuance, which essentially means that the Ethereum monetary policy should issue enough ETH as is required to secure the network. And that's really it. That was the simplest way to target a sustainable monetary policy here. And then, of course, we started building proof of stake during that period of time. This strapping young lad called Danny Ryan came along, looked at all the old proof of stake work that we had done, and literally threw it in the trash. He's like, "No, we're not doing it this way. We're going to do it. We're going to do it a different way." And a new version of proof of stake came into view, which we now know as the Beacon chain. There was discussions around this even in 2017, but really 2018 and 19 was where the spec was done, and then client teams began building in earnest in 2019. And then this was a monumental kind of event during that period of time, the interoperability event that was hosted for ETH2 by Consensus. So essentially, this assembled all the client teams that were building proof of stake together with the goal of getting them to talk to each other. Because as I said earlier, we place a lot of emphasis on client diversity, but if the clients can't talk to each other, then it's useless. And it was a great success. All the clients were able to talk to each other, as you can see from the screenshot on the right. And the work continued during this period on further test nets, and obviously getting this thing to mainnet. And yeah, this is Danny Ryan, for those of you who don't know. He was really Ethereum Jesus during this period of time because he was acting as the central coordination point to get proof of stake over the line. I truly believe that without him doing this, we may not have proof of stake today on Ethereum. And I just wanted to give a shout out to him because he recently took a step back from the ecosystem. But please, yes, clap him. He was extremely instrumental in getting this over the line. Now, of course, after that, in 2020, we had DeFi Summer. Now, this is what really put DeFi on the map. It started technically with Synthetics in 2019. They had like a yield farming program that they did. But then in June of 2020, Compound launched their own yield farming. And it was the right place, right time because the market was heating up again. Everyone was home because of COVID lockdowns, of course, and more people were paying attention. And then we had what we have on the right-hand side here. We have this I guess, concept of farming. So you'd deposit funds into some contract that may or may not be audited. Most of the time it wasn't, and you had no idea if you were going to lose your money or not. Didn't learn anything from the DAO, obviously. But you would get something like 4 million% APY. And it was just a very crazy time for those that were there. And this was only possible because of the hard work that was done during the bear market. Like all these DeFi protocols were live and went live during the bear market. They did not exist really before that in any real way. And it enabled Ethereum to really showcase to people that DeFi was real. It wasn't just something that all of us talk about in some back rooms. It's real, people can use it, and so on and so forth. But then, of course, it came with one large caveat. high fees on L1 Ethereum? Who has spent like tens, hundreds of dollars on L1 fees in their lifetime? And then you go to fees.wtf and you see how much that is worth today and you start crying a little bit, right? Because it wasn't just what it was worth at the time, it's now what it could have been worth now. So we obviously know the future of finance, decentralized finance for the 0.1% or even less than that is not a future that we want to see at all. It really just locks everyone out except the very few. Ethereum during that time bled users to other L1s, of course, that were basically copying Ethereum, cranking up the gas limit, and I guess like being more short-term scalable, as it were. And then enter rollups, kinda, because they weren't really ready at the time, but we had some early iterations live there. So this is our garden after all of that. It's still not an infinite garden, but it's growing, right? We've got a lot more stuff happening in the garden. We've got some drones going around there, but it's still very insider, right? It's still just like for people in Ethereum, in crypto. We haven't really kind of gone out of the that kind of ecosystem yet. But then in 2020, end of 2020, timely, October 2020, when DeFi summer, I guess, unofficially ended, Vitalik posts this on the ETH Research Forum, I think the Ethereum Magicians Forum, which is a roll-up-centric roadmap for Ethereum. So this is really what's defined the last 5 years of Ethereum and what will define the next 5 years. But essentially, Vitalik stated that we should go all in on roll-ups. Ethereum L1 should not be the layer that we kind of like scale up, you know, with super nodes, with really heavy validator nodes and everything like that. We should really focus on getting a blossoming L2 ecosystem and basically have scalability via that. And we do this for a number of different reasons. Biggest reason, I think, that is often overlooked is that if we were to scale the L1, you have to go through the governance process of L1, which is incredibly slow. There's lots of different actors there. It's very decentralized. So Ethereum L1 really couldn't scale to meet this demand because of that fact. We had to make a choice here, and that choice was made. And there's path dependence to choices like this. You make a choice today, and you have to be happy with how it is in 5 years. And that's exactly what we did here. And as anyone who listens to my podcast and listens to me on Twitter knows, I'm a huge fan of this roll-up-centric roadmap for obvious reasons, but it also comes with a bunch of, I guess, like drawbacks, temporary drawbacks of fragmenting things, a bit of confusion for users, so on and so forth. But we did decide at the time that this was the only way to scale Ethereum to the world based on not just, I guess, what we learned in Ethereum, but also what we've learned in computing generally over the decades. You know, not everything exists on just one server in the world. There's millions of servers all around the world, and we basically bring them all together to make the user experience seamless. And then Vitalik also posted the extended roadmap back then. So this wasn't just about rollups and layer twos. This was everything. This was basically the roadmap that we all know and familiar with, that we see him post on Twitter, the Scourge, the Surge. You know, people make memes out of this, but it is the roadmap nonetheless. And contrary to popular belief, it is not a sequential roadmap. It's not like we follow down the list. It works in parallel. So different parts of the roadmap are being worked on in different times by different groups and different teams. And then whatever's ready goes into the network during the semi-regular hard forks that we have. And as I said, this concept of path dependence is critical. We want to do it once and do it right, because if we decide in 5 years, oh, wow, that was the wrong thing to do, let's change course, that is incredibly hard to do. And also we have to be certain that that change of course is the right thing, because if we just come to that issue in 5 years from now again, it's the same thing. It's the path dependence. It locks us into something. So as I said, the roll-up centric roadmap to me is so, and the extended roadmap is so important and so good, because essentially it allows us to explore many different paths, especially the roll-up roadmap. We get to have this free market of L2s on Ethereum that are exploring these different design spaces without giving up what makes Ethereum L1 great. But it does come with trade-offs. And then bringing it all together, this graphic was published by Trent Van Epps, I think in 2020 or 2021. We used to call these things like ETH 1.1x or 1.5, ETH 2, and we still call them rollups, of course. And the phases down the bottom of this graphic were changed over time. But essentially, this is how we thought about it back then, these different phases. But since we've delivered the merge, this has kind of like gone out of view, and we're basically all focused on just the Ethereum roadmap generally, because it's all one Ethereum now, right? It's not fragmented like this. We brought it all together. And the Beacon chain was also born in 2020. So this happened on December 1st, 2020. It was a new parallel chain to mainnet. It existed on its own, basically. It wasn't part of the core Ethereum network just yet. And that's why I say Ethereum was now sort of proof of stake, because it was proof of stake technically in name only, but Ethereum mainnet, the user layer, was still proof of work, and that's where everyone was doing their transactions on. And this was a one-way street. If you were to stake your ETH on this chain, withdrawals weren't available, and you didn't even get your rewards. So you would literally put ETH in, and you would have confidence that withdrawals would later be enabled, and you'd be able to take your ETH out, get your rewards, and nothing would go wrong. And I think this really speaks to the testament of Ethereum's resilience, stability, security, and trust that it has garnered from a lot of people, because millions of ETH were staked during this period of time when you couldn't unstake your ETH. And that, as I said, really speaks to the fact that we staked our ETH anyway. We did it because we had confidence in Ethereum, we had confidence in the long-term roadmap, and we knew that we were going to get our ETH back eventually. Probably later than we thought, but it was still there. And then this is just an image from ETH Stakers call when the beacon chain went live. This is like the exact point it went live, and all these different people on the call you can see there. But I remember I was on this call as well, and it was just a monumental achievement. Like really, if you were around back in 2017, 2018, felt like proof of stake was never going to happen. And then a couple of years later, it did happen, and we were all very excited. Then, of course, we had NFT mania, which really made fees on L1 extremely bad, like hundreds of Gwei, just the most expensive they had ever been. And the flashbacks to CryptoKitties were very strong, of course, because of this. And rollups, unfortunately, weren't ready yet. That was still too expensive. It was over $1 to do transactions on rollups. Yes, better than mainnet, but still too expensive to garner a lot of users. Little infrastructure support, no centralized exchanges offering withdrawals to these L2, so you still have to bridge from L1 to L2, which was incredibly expensive. There's not really a network effect because of that, and most of the rollups were not live yet. Base, the number one rollup today wasn't live back then. Arbitrum 1 wasn't live back then. I think it was really just Optimism and a few other smaller projects, but no one was really using them because of those reasons. And then, of course, in 2021, we also delivered EIP 1559, which we all know is the way we burn ETH on the network, but it has a more important role in fixing the Ethereum fee market. Because for anyone who did transactions before 1559 went live, your transactions would constantly get stuck. And then you'd have to basically replace the transaction with a new nonce. It's like some complex thing in order to push your transaction through, and transactions would just get stuck for a very long time. It would be a very inefficient market. But of course, with it came the burn. We burn the base fee portion of the fees, which is about 70 to 80% of the fees, and it makes ETH net deflationary from time to time. And out of this was born the ultrasound money meme, which has fallen out of favor as of late, which I think is not great, because I actually really like this meme. It really showcases the fact that Ethereum has a sustainable monetary policy now. And the thing is that we burn ETH when people are using the network. We're not forcing ETH to be burned. There has to be usage for ETH to be burned, which I think is just natural free market forces, and I'm a really big fan of that. So the merge came into view around this kind of like time period as well, 2021, because of the fact that we had delivered the beacon chain. So let's bring it all together. There was a lot of testing done on this, extensive testing, more testing than we probably needed to do. But again, it speaks to the fact that we want Ethereum to be a resilient and secure and strong network. We don't want to get the Ethereum going offline. And this was basically the first testnet that went live. You can see the screenshot on the right. And all hands on deck were on deck to deliver this thing by the end of 2022. That was a target given there. And then before the merge, we had something else happen, which was these OFAC sanctions on Tornado Cash. So OFAC is the Office of Foreign Asset Control in the US, managed by the Treasury Department. This is basically their big stick on things that they don't like. It's like, whack, you don't do what we don't want you to do, sort of thing. And we started asking this question: how strong is Ethereum's censorship resistance really? People have this misconception that these networks are censorship proof, as in no censorship can happen, but that is not true. This is censorship resistant because of the fact that validators have the power, and miners back then before the merge have the power to include or not include whatever transactions they want. And we also have a rather complex pipeline of transaction inclusion with MEV boost now. And this basically led to a push to improve Ethereum's transaction pipeline with things like inclusion lists and ePBS, technical things, but coming into view now actually on the current roadmap. And as you can see on the right-hand side, as I mentioned, like the MEV boost pipeline is the top thing. So in the green are the percentage of those entities that are not censoring, and the red is the ones that are censoring. So you can see that the relays as part of the MEV boost network are the most censoring, but the validators and the builders are not. And that changes quite frequently because there's only a few builders. So if a few of them start censoring, then that percentage goes way up. And then the validators, because we have a much more distributed validator set, it's harder and harder for that red percentage to go up. And then we also asked, what does this mean for privacy generally? Because as you can see on the graphic on the bottom, there was a chilling effect. Tornado Cash was still live on the network. it's a decentralized set of smart contracts, but not many people use it anymore because it's literally illegal to use it now if you're a US citizen or person. And unfortunately, open source developers were also arrested over this. Roman Storm and Alexei Pertsev, and they're still fighting this. They're still fighting their cases here. So just wanted to shout out, if you want to donate to them, you can go to wewantjusticedao.org and donate to their cases there. But yeah, they were basically arrested for building open source code and putting it out there. It's just a crazy thing that obviously nation states do. They try to make examples out of people. And then the merge happened. This was a monumental event in the Ethereum ecosystem, probably the biggest event in our history. The goal was to make Ethereum whole again, bring the user layer and the beacon chain together, formerly known as ETH1 and ETH2. And as you can see, we did that. The Panda was merged together. But this was also one of the greatest coordination challenges in software development history. It required coordination of hundreds, if not thousands of people all around the globe with their own interests, their own incentives, coming together to actually build this thing. And as I said earlier, like Danny Ryan was instrumental here in coordinating, because coordination does not imply centralization. You need someone to coordinate. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of disparate groups that don't know what to do. And that was Danny Ryan's role there, along with other people, of course, but he was very instrumental. And of course, the merge went live on September 15th. It went a bit too smoothly, though. I remember being on the call, and all the core devs and researchers were on the call, and we're like, wait, is everything wrong? Like, is what we're looking at, the dashboards we're looking at, wrong? Because it was just too smooth. It was literally so seamless that users did not notice anything happened at all. It just, from 1 minute, we were on proof of work, and we had two separate networks. The next minute, we were on proof of stake, and the network was whole again. And again, this speaks to the testament of the fact that we have an incredibly strong Ethereum core developer and researcher base that understands that these things take time to build. You want to do extensive testing to make sure that the Ethereum network stays resilient, because to date, the Ethereum network has not gone offline ever. 100% uptime. That is more than centralized servers and services. Nothing can claim that, as far as I know, at scale like Ethereum can. So we really did build a resilient network here. And the fact that we did the merge so perfectly, that's what we were all like on the call. We're like, it doesn't make much, it's a bit confusing that it went so smoothly because we were expecting things to happen. But of course, there was some minor bugs in clients and stuff like that, but that was expected and not a big deal. And it was a huge boost to core developer and researcher morale. And this is when client diversity got real. We started really caring about client diversity because we have 10 plus clients now, 5 on the consensus layer, 5 on the execution layer, and Geth was actually at 90% of the market share on the execution client side. And that meant if there was a bug in Geth, it could have possibly led to a catastrophic, event for Ethereum. So there was a real push to make sure that we had real client diversity on Ethereum, making sure that no client had over the critical threshold, which is about 66% of the network, and we've achieved that. And Vitalik actually mentioned this in his opening ceremony talk. Again, this is a testament to Ethereum building for the right things. Like, this is incredibly hard to achieve. This actually bucks the trend of software development generally. The fact that we have client diversity when there is there is economic incentives to do this, but no direct economic incentives to do this. It really was because everyone came together and said, we need good client diversity for such and such reason, and people responded to that. And this is what we have today. And these teams are all independent of each other. They're independently funded. They're not all just part of the Ethereum Foundation, which I think is critically important to mention as well. And they're funded in various different ways. One of those ways is something called the Protocol Guild, which is an initiative spun up around that time, which is basically a sustainable way to fund core developers and researchers on chain. You can verify this all on chain. There's also a Dune Analytics dashboard, as I've screenshotted here. But this was basically a way to align incentives in the community. Get the apps that build on Ethereum, get the developers that build on Ethereum, get all these parties to essentially pledge 1% of their tokens to the Protocol Guild so that core developers can share in the upside of what they've built more directly. And even if they don't take the pledge, they can still donate to this. It's an open contract. Anyone can donate to it. And it gets split among the 170-something core developers and researchers, and they get a share of this here. And there's $50 million currently in that pool. So it's quite substantial, but the goal is to obviously grow that to billions and billions of dollars and distribute that to core developers and researchers. And of course, in 2023 April, we finally were able to withdraw our staked ETH. As I said before, it took way longer than anyone thought, but we could withdraw our staked ETH, we could withdraw our rewards, and this was a huge event because it de-risked ETH staking. There was a slight dip in ETH staking due to Kraken because of the fact that the SEC went after Kraken and said you have to shut down your staking product, so they withdrew all of their customers' ETH, non-institutional customers' ETH, but then after that, it's been up only since then because there there is no real, I mean, there's risks involved with staking ETH, but there's no longer that risk of not knowing when you can withdraw from the chain, withdraw your rewards. So there's been a lot of ETH staked. And as well, at the same time, there was a staking diversity push. Just like we have client diversity, we also care about staking diversity. We don't want one entity to have too much stake on the network. Lido was approaching a critical threshold back then of 33%. And it didn't actually reach that threshold because there was a very strong social push to make sure that that market share came down. Now, I don't want to pick on Lido. They're the biggest, and they're also not just one entity. There are many different node operators that are part of Lido, but it speaks, again, to the testament of the community that we were able to do this. There was a reshuffling of stake after withdrawals were enabled, and it kind of worked because Lido is still a large market share here, but we have more competition in the staking space and a lot more diversity of stake now. All right, and after that, in this year actually, so we're coming close to the present now, Blobs went live in March of 2024. Now, this is a huge deal because it basically collapsed the costs of using layer 2s and finally got layer 2s to be not as cheap as we would like them to be, but very, very, very cheap, right? It created a new space for rollups to post their data, which is their biggest cost. And I'll show you in the next slide how it reduced these fees. I consider them a loss leader for Ethereum. I know there's been discussions around ETH value accrual from this, but this is the way Ethereum scales. We shouldn't be worried about value accrual when there's like barely any on-chain users at this point. We have billions of people and trillions of bots and AI agents to onboard. We can worry about the value accrual properties of Blobs later. Let's just onboard as many entities as we can on-chain, and that's exactly what Blobs enable. And they're also relatively easy to scale up alongside things like Peer DAS and Full DAS, which are coming in the near future. And as you can see here, this was the effect of Blobs. Cost absolutely collapsed. So costs paid by rollups to L1 collapsed, which were then passed on to users. And now we have basically sub-cent fees on these rollups using Ethereum DA or data availability, which is Blobs. And I put here only temporary until the Blob ceiling is hit. You can tell I made this presentation 2 weeks ago because the Blob ceiling was hit 2 weeks ago. And now Blobs are in essentially price discovery. They're not free anymore. And we're going to keep scaling this up. But yeah, there is a cost to them now. And then, of course, we had the ETH ETF, which I was a big proponent of, study May 23rd. You guys remember that, right? It defied all odds to get approved. Like literally, you can see on Polymarket, right? The odds were like less than 10% that this thing was going to get approved until 3 days before it got approved. Now, the reason why this is critically important is because ETH is now conclusively a commodity. There's no discussions around its status as a security or anything anymore. And this is incredibly important for traditional finance, institutional investors to get involved with ETH as an asset and also Ethereum as a network. And they have gotten involved in a really big way because they're actually here. But this is what our garden is looking like after all of that. It's looking a lot more vibrant, right? Not infinite just yet, but a lot more vibrant, a lot of things happening across many different areas in the Ethereum ecosystem. And ETH is worth $400 billion. I think it's worth a little bit less today, but I took this screenshot the other day. But it is one of the most valuable assets in the world. It started from almost $0. I think 30 cents was the effective price if you bought at the ICO. ETH is considered a money and a store of value by many in the industry. It accrues value from its network activity, but on top of that, it also has a monetary premium attached to that, which I believe there's talk about that today as well. That'll go into more detail. And I strongly believe that a more valuable ETH does not mean that we all just get rich and that's what we should care about. It means that there's more economic bandwidth for Ethereum. And essentially what this means is that more ETH can be used and a more valuable ETH can be used within the ecosystem to create more valuable DeFi, more valuable things like NFTs, get institutions involved. Like it just creates all this extra space, all this extra bandwidth for us to use because it's not just the actual bandwidth that we need to do and not just the actual block space, which can be considered bandwidth that we need to scale up. We also need to scale up economic bandwidth so that there's more money around for people to do stuff with. So there's over 34 million ETH staked today. So this is going through what's happening today. So there's over 34 million ETH staked today, over $100 billion worth. There's a competitive staking and restaking ecosystem. It's not just one or two entities. It is a vibrant bunch of entities. There are tens of thousands of full nodes with thousands of node operators all around the world. But our greatest achievement are the bottom two things. We have the most solo stakers of any chain by far. No one even comes close. And this is absolutely massive because it is still a huge cost to get involved with solo staking. It's 32 ETH as a minimum. There are different ways to do it, Rocket Pool and others that allow you to stake with less, but true solo staking takes 32 ETH. And we have hundreds, if not thousands of these solo stakers on the network, which no other network even comes close to. Not even Bitcoin in terms of like solo miners, because that's not feasible anymore. Solo stakers on Ethereum are the beating heart, and I strongly believe that. I'm a solo staking maxi above everything else. And we also also have real client diversity, which again, no other network has. Bitcoin has one client. If that client has a bug, a critical bug in it, that is the whole network going offline. Or if there's an inflation bug, that means that billions, trillions of BTC can be minted out of thin air. That can't happen on Ethereum in the current state because we have real client diversity. If one client has a bug, maybe we don't finalize for a little bit on the network, but the network does not go down and we do not suffer from a critical issue like that. So those two things, I think, deserve a round of applause for how incredible they are to achieve. I really do believe that. Also, rollups and layer 2s are now experiencing hypergrowth. There are so many of these layer 2s, few big winners so far, but that is natural given power laws. Fees are extremely cheap, as I mentioned, sub-cents. We're on the journey to stage 2 decentralization across these things. Some are at stage 1, most at stage 0, but a lot of them have committed to getting to stage 2, and they're keeping users in the Ethereum ecosystem. People say they're parasitic. I don't believe that at all. I believe they keep users in the Ethereum ecosystem because you can make the counter argument that if we didn't have layer 2s, where would all these users be going? They'd be going to other chains because Ethereum L1 is too expensive for them, and that is parasitic. Ethereum L2s are not parasitic to Ethereum L1, they're parasitic to the competitor L1s. Blobs working as intended. You can see here, we're at the blob ceiling, as I mentioned. There's a wide variety of different L2s posting blobs to Ethereum L1, and on the bottom graphic shows there that the blob target is 3 blobs per slot. We have hit that target, and we've been there for 2 weeks now, I believe, and they're saturated. So the fee market is kicking in, value is flowing to Ethereum and ETH as an asset, and more blob scaling is coming in the future as well, because we don't actually want this to be a long-term thing. We want blobs to be free or very cheap for a long time to onboard more users, but it proved out the Ethereum DA thesis, I think, so far. We have DeFi continuing to grow. L1 is obviously still expensive. Only high-value DeFi can thrive there, but the layer 2s offer a green field for DeFi to experiment again and to do new things and to basically do things like central limit order books, which is something we don't have across any chain, really. We have AMMs, the decentralized exchange AMMs, but we don't have the same experience that we have on centralized exchanges, which is a central limit order book, because the scale just wasn't there. There are a few L2s actually working on this specifically, and they're going live soon, such as Mega ETH. They're definitely targeting this use case, but we still don't have that. Even across other networks that are, I guess, like faster and more scalable, quote unquote, than Ethereum L1, that still doesn't exist. And the L2 roadmap unlocks that. And Uniswap recently announced their own chain. While technically it is not an app chain, it is a generalized chain. It does show that more and more projects and more, I guess, ecosystems want to spin up their own chain to, I guess, like own the customer experience, own the value. And we knew this was going to happen. This is, again, why the rollup centric roadmap was so genius in 2020. We knew that things would spin off into their own chains. So if that is the path, as I said, this path dependence thing is very important. If that is the path, why not let them do that in Ethereum? Let them build an L2 instead of going off and being an L1, because it is much better for Ethereum. Non-DeFi apps are also growing. Vitalik's been talking about Fileverse recently, which is a decentralized file sharing, not storage platform that's building in the Ethereum ecosystem. ENS, heavily used across the ecosystem, right? And they also announced their own chain. So that theme of projects having their own chain, but it's an L2, not an L1. All things zero knowledge. I mean, ZK is the end game. I think people plugged in have known that for a little while, but it becomes more true as time goes on. We have decentralized social platforms like Farcaster and Lens, and Polymarket's meteoric growth recently, thanks to the US election, has really put a spotlight on prediction markets, which aren't a crypto thing. They've been the idea has been around for decades, but crypto uniquely enables that because it can be decentralized, no one can shut it down, and you can have any market that you want. Stablecoins are also going parabolic, and this is crypto's biggest product market fit, even though no one likes to talk about it because you can't really speculate on this. You know, if your stablecoin goes off $1, then it's not a stablecoin anymore, and it's not a good thing, right? So you want it to be at $1, but yeah, no one really cares about that too much because you can't speculate on it. But it is the biggest product market fit, not just USD, euros also. Still almost completely centralized, which is a drawback, but they're there, they exist, they provide value to people. And I'm a strong believer that we can have centralized things built on these rails as long as they provide value to people, and as long as it makes sense to do so. It makes sense for stablecoins to an extent to be centralized, at least today, because of the fact that they have to interface with the real world a lot, like stablecoin payments, things like that, at merchants and stuff. When you pay them, it's going to go through a centralized processor unless they're directly accepting that stablecoin, like Coinbase Commerce or something like that. So I don't think it's that bad. But in saying that, I would really love to see more decentralized stablecoins. They're just much harder to build than centralized ones and scale up. We've seen that with DAI and other attempts out there. They have trouble scaling, which is the main thing because we need to scale up stablecoins. Big companies are also building on Ethereum, and they're not just all doing the same thing. They're doing different things. They're building layer twos, tokenization, real-world asset platforms, stablecoin infrastructure, and those are huge names. Those are some of the biggest companies in the world. BlackRock, the biggest investment manager in the world with trillions of AUM, is building on Ethereum, and Ethereum L1 specifically because they trust Ethereum to be reliable. It's a trust platform, right? It is critical infrastructure, and that's what they need, and that's why they go to Ethereum L1, even though it is expensive and not scalable, that they're choosing to build there because they value those properties and they want to be part of what I believe is the biggest financial system upgrade in history. Nothing has been done like this before, and it really is going to definitely change the world. And also, two worlds are colliding. We have these big companies, big centralized companies building on these decentralized rails. The largest financial institutions are getting involved. They're issuing tokenized US treasuries on-chain, which continue to grow. This is a nice graphic from Bitwise. And tokenization of assets other than fiat, other than stablecoins, are beginning to take off. And again, doing it on ETH L1, and they value what ETH L1 has to offer. And that's what we're at today. But there's the future of Ethereum. So I'm going to speculate a little bit here on what the future looks like. And a lot of things change as time goes on, and a lot of the stuff I say today may age poorly, but this is my vision of what the future of Ethereum could look like from here. So a multi-chain Ethereum. I think that's obvious at this point. We're going to have many, many, many chains, and they're going to be L2s, and they're going to connect into Ethereum. We're going to have a mostly unopinionated, credibly neutral base layer. So it doesn't favor any one of these L2s, doesn't favor any user. It is literally credibly neutral. Anyone can come and use it from anywhere in the world. Doesn't matter if you're from China or Russia or the US. It doesn't matter where you're from. You can use it. Keep users on Ethereum using this multi-chain vision because they're L2s instead of other L1s. And I think the most important thing is make Ethereum feel like a single chain to the user. Today, it's obviously fragmented. It doesn't feel like that. There are many different efforts across the ecosystem to make it feel like that. But that should be our, I guess, North Star, even though I hate that term now. That should be our North Star. Make it all feel like one chain to the user. Improve the base layer. This is also critically important. We want the base layer to look like this guy, right? We want him to be like all powerful and essentially secure, stable, and you can trust in the base layer to secure your L2, but also secure any apps that you build there. We will need to implement things like single slot finality and faster slot times, which are a bit technical, but critically important. And I think Justin Drake spoke about this in his Beam Chain talk, which, by the way, are things that are already on the roadmap. Justin didn't just come up with it. They're on the roadmap. They've been on that roadmap that I showed for a long time. We want to harden Ethereum proof of stake, make it even more secure than it is today. We shouldn't be happy with how it is today, even though it is awesome, incredible, secure. We still need to make it more. We can always push further, and that should be our guiding principle, of course. Improve censorship-resistant guarantees. As I said before, we're doing that as well. Minimize the negative externalities of MEV and make the chain easier to verify as well. Working towards the gigagas era, which is basically a nerdy way of saying scale Ethereum exponentially via these L2s, millions of TPS across the L2s, billions, trillions, because we've got these AI agents coming online now. Differentiated block space, not just EVM, SVM, WASM, and other virtual machines and other programming languages to build on Ethereum. We need to get the top L2s to become stage 2 as well, to decentralize, because they're no good being centralized for too long. Becoming based. So you've heard a lot about based rollups. If you've been paying attention, they're potentially the end game, but I think like the true end game is native rollups. You may have heard Martin talking about this at one of his talks at DevCon. You should check that out if you haven't yet. But based rollups are here today and in the near future. Native rollups are a bit further out. So I like base rollups because they're easier to reason about and easier to see. But base rollups and native rollups are the end games. Full alignment with Ethereum L1, economic alignment, social alignment, no centralized sequences, stuff like that, and interoperability between the different rollups. And it helps to achieve that single Ethereum chain feeling. I'm being told my time's up, so if I rush through. Okay, creating unstoppable and scalable apps. That was the original vision of Ethereum. Create immutable, unstoppable apps on Ethereum, decentralized, but also easy and cheap, right? But they can't just be hard to use. They can't be expensive to use because then it's useless to everyone. We want to provide real value to real people. And this is the ultimate Ethereum vision. This is actually a Bankless graphic they put together. Ethereum at the center, ETH at the center, with many different chains and ecosystems around it, but still part of the wider Ethereum ecosystem, the wider Ethereum economy. And those points that I've got there, that's basically what we should be aiming towards. Robust, decentralized, credibly neutral and censorship-resistant base layer, a layer 2 ecosystem that feels like a single chain, apps that bring real value to people's lives, and a strong and valuable ETH to secure it all and use as economic bandwidth. And these are all the final pieces coming together. for Ethereum to scale to the world. Ethereum has already been on this journey for over 10 years so far because it was born in mid-2015. We're 4 to 5 years into the current roadmap. Probably going to take a few more years to deliver on most of what the roadmap has, but Ethereum is for everyone, so you should come help build it. And that is potentially what our infinite garden could look like in the end. Like, it's literally infinite in this picture. You can't see, it's garden for as far as you can see. It's thriving. There's many different kind of little ecosystems within the wider Ethereum ecosystem, but we've got that path there. Again, that path dependence is the main theme here. That's the path that we're on, and we have things all building around that path, and that is our infinite garden. So with that, thank you for listening.